Got a 2021 Mazda CX-9, and this has got the electronic parking brake, and the owner has asked me to do the rear pads and rotors. So I'm going to show you how quickly and easily we can get that done. Hey, what's up YouTube? Down the Fix It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your rear brake pads and rotors on a 2021 Mazda CX-9. Now this one does have the electronic parking brake, so the first thing we need to do is retract that and put it into service mode so that we can change out these pads and rotors. Now you can do this a few different ways. You can take off this motor and just wind the mechanism back in manually, or you can even use a little 9-volt battery as long as you disconnect it from the vehicle, or you can use a scan tool to do that. But this particular vehicle's got a pretty quick and easy little cheat code. It's the quickest and easiest way to do this one, and that's what we're going to do so that we can retract this, put it into service mode, and change these pads out. Now this vehicle is really easy to put into service mode without a scan tool, and you don't have to take that parking brake motor off. So all you need to do is have the key with you and press the start stop button twice, and that turns the ignition on. You can see that the lights are on here, but the engine is not on. Don't step on the brake when you're doing this. Now, when you have the ignition on, now if the parking brake is on, you're gonna wanna release the parking brake. Ours is already off. You're gonna come over here to this parking brake here. Now, what you're gonna do is step on the accelerator pedal and hold this down, and then press the start stop button 3 times, and that's gonna turn it off and then back on, and then you're gonna hear those motors wind back in. Now you heard the parking brake motors winding in, and you can see over here on the dash we do have our parking brake light on, and that lets us know that it is in service mode. So now we can turn this off, and then once we're done, I'll show you how to take it out of service mode. All right, now that we're in service mode, the next thing we need to do is push this caliper piston back in. I like to do it before I take the caliper off. There's a few different ways. I like to just use a little pry bar here. This is the Dominator demo driver from Mayhew. I really like this one. All you need to do is just pop it in here and pull that towards you. Now, I'm not going to pull that all the way yet until I pop the hood. I want to make sure that there's enough room in the master cylinder for the additional fluid that's going to travel backwards through the lines and up into that reservoir. So let's go do that now. All right, so here's our master cylinder reservoir, and you can see that our fluid level is down quite a ways from the max. So we've got enough room to push that fluid backwards without overflowing it. You can crack the lid open a little bit if you'd like. I don't usually take the lid off because the brake fluid is hygroscopic, meaning that it attracts moisture or water, and as it absorbs that moisture, that causes it to degrade and go bad. It lowers its boiling point. I just like to avoid exposing the brake fluid to air or moisture in the air so it will last longer. So let's go push that caliper piston back in now. Now, as an alternative method, you could take off this rubber cap and crack open the bleeder screw and expel the old fluid out that way, and a lot of people like to do that. That's fine if you'd like to. Now, if you do open that bleeder screw, you will potentially allow a little bit of air to get into the system, so you might have to bleed the brakes once you're done. The way that I'm doing it, we're not going to have to bleed the brakes at all. We're just going to cycle this backwards. Now, you don't need to twist this one as you push it in. This is just a straight push. So see, I'm just prying that. Slow and steady, even pressure. Now I'm going to shift over in between the inside pad and the rotor and push it the rest of the way in. There we go. Now you can see we got a lot more room. All right, now we can loosen and remove these 2 caliper slide pin bolts, and that's a 14mm socket. If these slide pins spin on you, you can grab a 19mm open end wrench to hold those slide pins or keep them from spinning. These ones are not spinning, so not a big deal. Just take these off. Set those aside. All right, we're gonna carefully lift this caliper off. Now keep in mind we're still plugged in over here. I'm just gonna use this little hook. And I'm just gonna kind of hang it on that little brake line bracket, and we still have room to get in here and take off this caliper bracket. All right, now we can pop out the old brake pads. Pretty worn down, but not quite scratching the rotor yet. Same with the outside. A little bit of grooves there happening, so definitely time to change. Now we can pop this hardware off of here as well. Our kit comes with new hardware. All right, now we need to take off these 2 larger bolts that hold the caliper bracket on. I'm going to use a 17mm socket on this long-handled ratchet and break these loose. zip these out the rest of the way. Now this one here, just have one hand holding the caliper bracket so it doesn't fall to the ground. You know, where I live, there's not a lot of rust, and so sometimes we get lucky and these are just pop right off, or you just hit it with your fist, and sometimes they are stuck on there pretty good. But a lot of rotors will come with a threaded hole, just like this one here. And what you can do is just grab a little bolt. This one happens to be M8 by 1.25, and just thread that in. And what that will do is act as like a force screw and press this rotor off of the hub. It's just going to press up against the hub. Let's see if that will work. There it is. Really wasn't stuck too bad, but that worked. You can see we do have quite a bit of rust and corrosion on there. Now again, if you live in a really rusty area, those threaded holes are sometimes just completely gone or completely rusted out, and you may have to resort to the Tanya Harding method, which does work pretty well. Just give it a few whacks and kind of alternate either side. You know, I try to hit the hub as well sometimes, so that'll break this loose, but this one does have quite a bit of rust caked up on here, so we're going to get a wire wheel and clean that up before we put the new rotor on. Just make sure that you do wear some eye protection if you're going to do something like this. Now, before I put the new rotor on, I'm going to brush the surface of that hub with some copper anti-seize. That, of course, will prevent that from rusting and prevent that from getting stuck the next time. Now, you can see this new rotor comes packed in some oil or grease that prevents it from rusting when it's on the shelf. So I'm just going to grab a little paper towel and hit that with some brake cleaner and wipe this off. Okay, and then we can just put that on. Now sometimes I'll thread a little lug nut on here just to hold the rotor steady while we put the caliper bracket and everything back on. Now let's grab that caliper bracket and we're going to clean out those slide pins and get that new hardware installed. All right, I'm going to get this caliper bracket cleaned up underneath the hardware with another one of these wire wheels. This one's a little bit different design and it really helps get into those grooves. And just again, remember to wear some safety glasses. We just need to make sure that it's clean underneath here where those brackets go. That looks good. Now we're going to take out and clean and re-grease these slide pins here as well. I just like to do them one at a time. This one really isn't too bad. I'm going to wipe off the old grease. If these are really sticky or caked up, I'll usually clean out those recesses as well, but these aren't really bad. So I'm just going to add some new grease here, just using this caliper grease from Versachem. It's this pretty blue color. You don't want to put too much on there, but that should do. And just pop it back in and kind of spin it as you go so that grease spreads around. And then you see this little rubber boot will just pop up onto the slide pin like that. And then when you push it in, it should spin really freely, but you also don't want it to push out. So if there's any air that's trapped inside, you kind of have to squeeze that boot. You hear it popping, kind of just burping some of the air out of there. Now that feels good right there. Same thing on this one. Just get this one out. This one also has a little rubber sleeve on it. Helps with vibration dampening, and sometimes those will swell, especially if somebody uses the wrong kind of grease. So you will have to replace that, or you can either get rid of it, or you see this little groove. Sometimes I'll cut that a little bit deeper. When these swell, sometimes they're really hard to put back in. This one's still in good shape. Just put some new grease on it and pop it back in. Same thing, just spin that around a little bit, push on it until that air burps out. All right, that looks good. Now I also like to use this same exact caliper grease and just brush a little bit underneath where those clips go. That will help prevent corrosion and buildup underneath. It's not so much for a lubricant, but a protectant. And that just helps to prevent any rust jacking or anything that would cause those caliper clips to lift. Just a really thin coat is all you need. All right, now we can reinstall the clips or the hardware here. Just line that up and snap it in place. You just want to make sure that that sits flush. This one's kind of fighting me a little bit. There we go. Sometimes you just gotta push that centerpiece down a little bit and that will help hold them in place. And that's how it should look. Let's do the other side. Just flip it around. Again, the middle piece kind of fights you a little bit. You kind of have to push these down, and while you're holding them down, push the little center tab through. You'll kind of hear it scratch as it grabs, and that's it. They are in, and they're fully seated. Now this is ready to go back on the vehicle. All right, now these are the caliper bracket bolts. I'm just gonna put a little bit of thread locker on them to help hold them in place after we torque them. This is Permatex, medium strength. Doesn't take much. You can see they had some remnants of some thread locker still on them, but this stuff will work. This will hold them in place. Just kind of spread that around. That looks good. And then just hold that bracket up while we get these started. Now I'm just gonna zip these on real quick with the little Milwaukee ratchet here. Now the torque spec I found online said 63 to 75 foot-pounds for these. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with 75. All right, now we can put on the new pads, and I noticed that these are labeled. They both say left for the left side, of course, and then the other two say right. So I'm just gonna put these in the same way that we took the old ones out, with this noisemaker or squealer on the bottom, kind of the trailing side of the pad, I guess, if you call it that. We'll just try to squeeze that in as we put this in. Ooh, almost had it. Oh, that is not wanting to go all the way in. Let's see if we can give it a little push. Yeah, that's too tight. I'm not comfortable with that. No way. That's not right. That's way too tight. All right, just wanted to show you something here real quick. This is the old pad. You see the angle of this tab as it comes up over here? It's got a little cutout and it pops into the end of that. This one here is flipped around backwards. It's upside down. And these are only side specific, so I'm gonna have to take off the tab off of the old pad. The other one here is correct. You see, the tab goes into the little notch at the end of the pad. This one does not, it's backwards, it's upside down. So I'm gonna have to take this off and transfer the old one on. Okay, so we had a little bit of a mishap here. This clip was flipped around though on the wrong side, basically. Even though these are all labeled left and right, we have the correct pads for the left side here, but whoever was putting these clips on put the wrong one on one of the pads. So my camera died, so I don't know if I was able to show you that, but I took the clip off of the old pad, luckily that we still had them, and that's gonna work out just fine. So let's get this one in here. Just kind of put it in at a little bit of an angle, and should be able to fit this one in now. There we go. Oh, that's much better. I was really fighting it on the last one. It's because the little cutout at the end of the pad. Let me show you here. Here's the opposite side. You see that little teeny cutout right there? That little cutout is where that clip goes, or the little tab of that clip. And so this basically was the opposite side, and so it was stacking up over here on this side, making it so that it wouldn't fit in. So just make sure that these clips are in the correct orientation when you're putting this on. But this one's ready to go back on as well. All we have to do is just get that started at a little bit of an angle. There it is. That's installed, and they're not too tight. You know, if your pads are too tight, they're not going to release. So that looks good. Now, before we put the caliper back on, one thing that I do like to do is apply a little silicone ceramic extreme grease to the outside of the shims here. That's just going to make contact here on the caliper, and it helps dampen some of the vibrations that can cause noise. Just a really thin coat is all you need, and you really only need it in the areas that are going to make contact. So here on the outside pad, it's really kind of right here, and on the inside pad, kind of right in the middle. You can also smear some on the face of this caliper piston or here on the bracket. Now I also want to point out that there is a little V notch here on the top and bottom. You just need to make sure that the orientation is still straight up and down. Since we didn't spin the piston, it should be fine. So I'm just going to lift this up, take the hook off, and just carefully put this over the pads. There we go. I can feel that little tab go into the little V-notch on the caliper face. So now I'm just going to get these little caliper slide pin bolts started. I'm just going to zip these on really lightly with this. Now the torque spec that I found online for these caliper slide pin bolts, the smaller ones, is 21 foot-pounds. All right. Now we were able to torque this no problem. Again, if you need to, you can grab a little open end wrench and put it up here to hold that steady. We were able to torque this no problem. All right, now we can throw the tire back on. Don't forget to take this lug nut off. Get these lug nuts started. All right, well, we're pretty much done, but we still need to go back in the vehicle and step on the brake pedal several times to push the caliper piston back out, pressing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. Now, when you do this, don't press the pedal all the way to the floor. That can damage the seals in your master cylinder. Just press it down halfway several times until it feels firm. And then don't forget to double check the fluid level in the master cylinder as well. Make sure that that's all topped off where it needs to be. And then we need to take the electronic parking brake out of service mode. And that's the same method basically, but the only thing is rather than push down, you're gonna pull up and step on the accelerator while you cycle that start-stop switch 3 times after having the ignition on. What that's doing is just actuating those motors and adjusting them so that they're much closer, so that every time you apply the electronic parking brake, it's going to engage. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. And of course, I'll get a link in the description to some of the parts and tools used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching and good luck.